Hi everyone, I'm so happy that you're here to join me for the Way of the Animal podcast. So on today's podcast, I have my mum with me. Anne is her name, but I call her mum. And actually, I thought about having you on, mum, because I've been having quite a lot of thoughts about my garden and gardening. And at this place, I would say this is the first time that I've really had the time for gardening. And by gardening, I mean like producing vegetables and things in the garden, as well as having some flowers here and there. And yeah, I've been having a lot of thoughts about it. And what actually brought me to it was pruning tomatoes. So you know how you have to take they call them suckers, but they're just other leaders on the tomatoes. And
That's right.
I really felt like I didn't want to do it. And so I really wanted to find out more about why it's done and the process behind it, because for me, when I approach gardening when I approach everything in life, I approach it in the how would this happen naturally? What would be the natural way that this would happen? So, and I know like you've been producing gardens, veg in the garden for years. Like I remember as a kid helping you. So you're my guru, even though you don't feel like it, but you've been doing it long enough. You should be a guru.
Yeah. But I mean, with the tomatoes, for instance, there are tomato plants that you can grow that you don't have to do that with.
Yeah, the determinate.
Yeah,
and
right, but there's a Scottish gardening program, Beech Grove Garden.
Yep.
Which is based
Remember
in Aberdeen.
It well.
And Carol, the presenter, she said her father never pruned his tomatoes.
Mm-hmm.
So she did a comparative. She pruned hers and checked his and saw what production there was. There wasn't a great deal of difference, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
So there you are. But I do think the leaders and the things you prick off, they do take away the energy of the plant, so you get a lot of leaf, and the actual fruits don't fruit sometimes as well because they don't get the sunlight to fruit.
So that's interesting, because that, I obviously have been reading up about it, and we're going to right into the detail of the tomatoes, but it's an interesting topic.
Yeah,
because
it is.
Plants need leaves to photosynthesize. The more leaves, the more energy the plant's going to have. So part of you're taking off the leaders, you're taking off more of the plant's availability to create more energy. And when I got into this, is like it led me down a whole wormhole of plant energy. And, the thought that came through for me was, well, perhaps if you're taking away some of that energy and its availability just as a scientific approach, the photosensitivity of being able to that word of being able to produce the sugars to create the fruits. What is the energy value of the fruit that's produced on a plant that has been heavily pruned?
That's a good question.
Is it less nutrient dense? Has it less of the natural sugars? Is it less energy available as a good produce for you to eat? So this is where I just thought this is a whole other concept to bring into your gardening that I thought you'd find really interesting.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. Yeah. Well, I hadn't thought about that, so it just shows.
Yeah, it's just, because plants are energies. They have done experiments where they have, snipped off a leaf of a plant, and you can still see the outline of the leaf in its energy form without the leaf being there. So, there's all energy involved, whether it's the actual metabolism, it's not, they don't metabolize, but the photosynthesizing the sun to create the plant growth, you know, all the sugars that come into the plant, that's all energy. So it's just, yeah, it's been a really interesting journey for me. And then realizing like your connection to the garden and, you know, how you're being with your garden to help it. It's like more than just put some seeds in the ground and throw stuff at it to get it to grow, you know? It's realizing it's a whole ecosystem, it's a whole connection. And I think actually this ranch helped me get on. I know I'm doing a lot of talking just now, but the ranch actually made me think about it more because this ranch is turning itself around from being one that used a lot of synthetic, oh my gosh, I'm struggling with these words this morning,
Yeah.
synthetic fertilizers, and you know, just throwing everything to just make what they want to grow instead of looking at the actual soil, you know, the animals that live here, the
Yeah.
insects, the importance of the whole
Yeah.
ecosystem as a whole thing. And, you know, and then I've like micro brought that permaculture thoughts into my garden and thinking, you know, there's a lot of people that think, oh, I hate my lawn. It's full of I hate dandelions, full of dandelions. I hate them. Such a terrible weed. And realizing that everything is showing you what your soil's like, what your garden's like, you know, because of what grows there naturally.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a lot to be said for, because funnily enough, I was doing a tour of an estate that has just been purchased by a future forest company. And this was yesterday, and we were talking about the importance not so much of planting trees for because of climate change and sequestration, but we should be focusing on biodiversity within the land because, as someone said, in terms of the UK, you'd have to plant the whole of the UK with trees to offset carbon emissions. So it's an impossible task in that way, but being biodiverse with the ground. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's where, if you're gardening, I'm not a very tidy gardener. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing,
I
but I have
think
a
it's
lot of
good.
insects. Um, there's a lot of interplay between flowers and plants, and yeah, and I get a lot of bad insects and bad bad things that take my plants, but I have to accept that that's part of gardening anyway.
And I think as
So
well though, in when you're doing that connected gardening and you're seeing the bad insects as you know, they're bad for you. They're just insects.
yes, yeah,
What they're bad for you because they destroy your produce is the more you create the right habitat for perhaps their predators, the predator insects that get them, then a balance should be met.
yeah, yeah,
Interestingly, it just made me think of the ranch because they've just sort of top sowed, so they don't plow here. So when I
yeah,
say reseeded, this is like top seeding rather than actually plowing, because plowing
yeah,
absolutely it's like tilling in your garden. It can
yeah,
wreck the whole soil structure, everything.
yeah,
So they've seeded a load with grass and what have you, and actually they do a system of they put like a cover crop with lots of peas and turnips and all the right
yeah,
things that would help the ground, and then we harvest that and then we put in the grass after, so it's like a whole system. But more importantly, they'd had a load of caterpillars come through and just decimate a load of the grass.
all right,
And what was really nice was the manager said, okay, well, that's because we've been throwing pesticides, you know, before he took over,
yes,
throwing pesticides and fertilizer all in the place. So these caterpillars have just been wiped out every time. So the butterfly,
yeah,
you know, the butterflies that they
yeah,
become just been wiped out. So now there's extreme amount of them because there's nothing stopping them. So now we just are waiting for the balance of the predator to just make it so that there's not quite as many caterpillars. I mean, caterpillars, you're always going to have them, but like, you know, it's like locusts,
yeah,
you know, it's just like you need the balance. So it's really um, fascinating to think of, you know, gardening in a way and having things in a way that just everything balances each other and encouraging the right things to help the wrong. And it's like they do the companion planting in the garden.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think they found that when they did the rewilding, the rewilding project at Knapp, in England, that's what they found, a flush of a mass of one sort of flower, one sort of plant, and then decimation by insects, and then eventually it all balanced out.
Yeah.
So it seemed like it was a whole total disaster, but then it wasn't.
Yeah, it takes time for the balance to happen. I mean, you have the same with you see when there's deforestation, they quite often leave single trees in the middle of it. And if people don't know, these single trees are there for the birds of prey to land on to take out the vole population, because they tend to go absolutely crazy when you deforest them. And then they want to replant it, obviously. And obviously when there's a lot of voles and things like that, they'll just eat the trees before they get a chance. So it's it's understanding that balance and understanding that sometimes it's soul destroying because something you've spent all your energy and time growing gets decimated. Then and you don't, as a sort of organic, holistic, natural gardener, you don't want to be doing preventative treatments, even if they're organic. You know what I mean? Like diamectinous earth, if I can even say words today. Because you're also killing the predators that would, be helpful in your garden. So it's really, it's an interesting dynamic and understanding that everything's connected, and sometimes you need to let the balance happen, I think.
Yeah, and there's obviously plants and insects have feelings and that we don't understand.
Yeah,
we don't understand some of the things that I'm just reading a book by France Duval about how smart are we smart enough to understand how smart animals are. So it's really so it's about refocusing how you think about things. I mean, even though you're going to kill plants, you're going to kill animals for food, etc.
Well, even so far as there's the whole vegan thing for not killing animals to eat, so they're on the plant diet, but realizing to produce their diet, there's insects dying, there's animals dying, and when it comes down to it, like, plants are dying.
Yes.
Why? I mean, I understand why, but why are we valuing an animal's life over a plant's life? And I get why. I'm not stupid, but there is, like, if you go deeper into it, there's a whole connection. It's very interesting.
Yeah. Whole cycle in there.
It's very interesting how the garden has taken me on this little wormhole of a journey. And I think it really came from, I really appreciate the garden. So if I'm feeling a bit unbalanced, or I've been struggling, or I've been at the computer for too long and I need to get into nature, I'm lucky enough that I have a nice garden out here. And I love walking around and watching what's come up and what's growing. And I've put loads of wildflower seeds and different things in different pots, and just seeing everything, come to life. Watching the hummingbirds feed from the flowers I've planted, that's just the best feeling. Seeing all the dandelions, the butterflies, all the insects, seeing ladybirds, or ladybugs as they call them out here, and knowing that they are going to be helping with any aphids. And it's a really sort of a sanctuary for me. Even when I go out and like, oh, that's not doing so well, it's just like, well, that's nature. I can't, I've realized, like, to balance it out, just grow more than I need. And then when ones are killed by things or is eaten by things, then I still have some for myself. It's like sharing. Reciprocity. Reciprocity?
Yes, reciprocity, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think and gardening and doing things on the land has always been seen as a form of therapy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because it calms the spirit and it puts you in contact. I think it puts you in contact with your ancestral past.
Yeah.
Because I think from hunter-gatherers to producing gardens, I don't think there is a family tree where there wouldn't be, you wouldn't in the past have been a farmer or a producer of something on the land, because that's
Very
what we
true.
did before we entered the cities and did industrial activities. So I think everybody has the capacity to have that gardening spirit.
Yeah. And it's so peaceful, even when the weeds have gone nuts and you're just in there. But it's just like you can walk around, you just pull a little bit of the weeds, and of course we're going to call them weeds, but they're just other plants that we don't want.
Yes, that's right.
I love, like, we've got a few raised beds, and then we've got a big area of soil that's got things growing on it. And the best thing for me is barefoot in there and weeding and just walking around in there. And it's just like, yeah, it's that connection to the earth, to our ancestors. Yeah, it's interesting realizing that gardening is so much more than just producing produce or making flowers look pretty, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
Bigger than we could ever. It's like, yeah, it's healing, you know, without even getting your highly nutritious, good energy produce that you've grown yourself. It's just the whole process of connection within it is something to be valued, I think.
Definitely, yes. Yeah.
And that was kind of what I wanted to talk to you about, the gardening side of it. I know I said to you, I just sort of sent you a message like, I want to talk about gardening. And you're like, really? Okay. But it was because it was that deeper sense in the gardening.
Because I don't have a fancy garden. I have a rambling garden, as they say.
But that's the best way, I think. When you get lost in trying to create perfection with nature, you're never going to get that.
Well, you're always fighting against it. So at some point, unless you're physically able, it overrides.
Well, it's that realization that you can't control nature.
Yeah.
In the same way that unless you go the full chemicals human, like the full human way, which is just decimate to get what you want out of the land, then you can't control nature, and you just have to work with it as much as you can. You know, I mean, last year I get a bit worried because now out here we get severe thunderstorms. So last year we had massive hail come with one of the severe thunderstorms and just tore up all the leaves of the plants. And they'd already been a bit slow coming because I'd been late planting. And for a while I worried about it, and then realizing that, you know, it just is what it is. I can't control nature. And actually the plants regenerated and regrew, just left them to be how they were and self-produced, you know?
Yeah. That's very true. Yeah. Things will produce or not.
Yeah. But I'm trying to take that, trying to not let take the garden too personally in that way, where if there's a disaster, it hits me hard. You know, I feel like I failed. It's like understanding that it's part of life, and understanding that the garden is a good metaphor about life, really. You know, some things work, some don't, need to move on. You know, you can't.
I think if you've had a garden long enough, and if you kept records, you'd find some things grew really well, and then for 5 years they might not grow at all. And I think sometimes that might be how you've used the soil. I don't know. There's so many reasons.
Yeah.
But the altering temperatures. So if you have a cold spring, or if you have a dry spring, or if you have a wet spring, so it can have an impact on anything you grow. So you don't have any control over that. That's pot luck.
Yeah. And it's
that definitely is pot luck.
And you can't even really plant, you know, go, okay, well, it looks like it's going to be a cool spring, so I'll plant these this year, because you just plant the same things, and some things go that well, and it's like each year you get, so, you know, last year we were a bit late, then we got hailed, and even though it was really good hot weather, my sweet corn did not have time to mature, because I had them outside rather than the UK where you have them undercover, you know, Well, certainly Scotland, you have them in a polytunnel or
Yeah.
whatever. So this year I've got cobs coming already on one variety, and I'm thinking, well, that's going to be more useful variety. It's maturing fast, so it's like that's something I've learned. But we've had the heat. We had a cool spring, so they were slow, but now we've had the heat, so they've come up.
Come away. Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, understanding that we're feeding the soil, not the plants, as well. You know, creating the most nutritious soil bed for the plants to be able to grow from, rather than, you know, using artificial fertilizer. You're just fertilizing the plants. You're never really increasing the soil bed value of itself, you know. And it's so exciting to see all the worms and insect, you know, like I said,
Well,
the
that's it.
ladybird, you know, it's a really good sign that your garden's coming on.
Garden's healthy. That's good.
Mm.
That's very good. Yeah, yeah.
But then you're involved in a very interesting, I think it's an amazing project within your community there on the island, with the tree nursery.
That's right. Yes, yeah. So we began the tree nursery 5 years ago now, believe it
I
or
was
not.
trying to remember. I
Sure.
was like,
Yeah,
is it a few?
2019, I think.
Wow.
And we're all volunteers. There's a group of about 10 of us. And we leased some ground from Forestry and Land Scotland, which we're about to buy, which was good.
Oh, really?
If
That's
we've got the money,
exciting.
yes, that's the next plan.
Excellent.
And we had wanted, we really began because we were a group that didn't want to see chemicals used in forestry work. So we mounted a campaign about that. And from that, it led to maybe we should grow trees from mull, collect seeds on mull and grow them on to sell to other groups of people who want to plant trees. So that was where we began, and discovered, of course, it's just not that simple. Number one, there's a lot of paperwork and procedures that you have to do, which I think we're getting a handle on now. But it's a lot to do with provenance of trees and to make sure we don't transmit diseases.
Yeah.
So we have to have plant health inspections every year and fill in lots of forms and blah blah.
I can understand that. But I think the greatest thing is you are harvesting seeds from a climate that is, you know, quite hard for things to grow in sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, you're the you know, the feeling for me is like there should be some resilient trees.
Well, grown from where the seeds are collected and grown and planted where, rather than, I mean, bigger nurseries collect from different places, mostly in one area. So there's not a lot of diversity and benefit for the trees. So this is a good way of doing things.
And the other nurseries, they force them on more? Do you know, do they?
I don't think so. No.
Same sort of growing conditions as you then?
Same sort of growing conditions, yeah. We try to do it growing on beds, but our soil isn't very good. And that's a whole different, it took a lot more effort because you have to do lots of weeding for growing them in beds. But big tree nurseries do that.
Yeah.
Grow outside in beds. But we grow in cells, so in what we call cell-grown trees. So that means we don't have really onerous weeding problems.
Yeah.
But we do have to feed with a fertilizer the growing medium that we get.
Yeah. So, it'd be interesting if you could, like.
We did.
Yeah.
One of us did do an organic. We weren't very thorough, I don't think, the organic trial. They grew much more slowly, much more, and they were oak, which do grow slowly anyway. But in 3 3, because they were only sold last year.
Mm.
So in 3 years, it had taken 3 years to get to a saleable product, where usually it's 1 season.
And that's hard because now you're on the balance of wanting to do the way you want to do it, but also, you know, as a company. Well, it's not it's not. Is it a company? No.
As a charitable
as a
thing,
charitable group, you know, you're wanting to keep the income coming so you can produce what you're producing, so you can sell, you know. So it's that balance of doing what needs to be done to get viable product to sell and wanting to do it the way you want to do it. And it's interesting, what would have been a really long-term trial be really interesting to see how much stronger and resilient the ones that grow slower are.
Yes, I would agree with that. And we have discussed and debated. The problem is getting the right organic medium. So that's for us as a group, that's quite complicated. And organic compost that is pure enough for for tree growing is very, very expensive. So it's maybe 3 times as much as we're paying. So the commercial prices of trees might range from 50p a tree to 80p a tree. So we would never be able to compete at that way. We never make, well, we never make money as profit. It's more to put into the, but the fascinating bit has been collecting seeds, learning how and when to collect, learning that every seed has to have a different process to germinate. So that has been a big learning curve. So, for example, a rowan or mountain ash, naturally they would go through a bird's stomach and be scarified. So that's how you see mountain ash all over the place, because of that. So in order for it to germinate, you can't just plant a berry. You've got to mash them all up. And then this last winter, we put them in a sack with a little bit of sand and hung it outside. And in the spring, we must have about 5,000 rowan now that we've potted on. So that was a lot.
Yes, I bet. I can't even imagine. You know, what did you say? You 10 of you. Like, that's a lot.
So yeah. So I mean, we did this autumn last autumn was a good year for oak. So we've got about 10,000 oak saplings growing really, really well. So hazel and alder, which is the other tree that grows well. So we've probably got 15 to 20,000 trees to sell this year, which is pretty good.
And that's amazing because, you know, every person that you've got volunteering and your core group, you know, every one of you has put energy and effort into every one of those trees. You know, it's it's a whole, you know, I feel like it's a real, you know, it's a small part of the community, but it's a real community effort of connection. I love, because I follow the group on Facebook, and you know, I see you all get together, have your work party, or you have your celebration party from having had a work party, you know, and different people getting involved, helping set up waterers for the, you know, it's just like it's really, it's you know, talking about connection and reciprocity, you know, you guys are nailing it.
It's a great venture, really, because it is learning about how the environment works as well.
Because there is, isn't it? Is it beech trees? They only produce seeds. I know, you know, you're not doing beech, but like they only do seeds every 3 years or something. You know, there's like a whole.
It is really, really complicated, and things which we haven't got into. In Scotland, there's a big thing about aspen trees, and because they tend to not link up very well. So an aspen might a female aspen tree might be growing somewhere and produce flowers, and the male might be 20 miles away and not be in the zone. So it's very, you can't, it's almost impossible to produce aspen from seed. So you have to do it with root cuttings.
Yeah.
So there's a big project on doing that, and that takes more equipment than we've got at the moment, because you have to have a misting room, and it's very complicated. So we haven't learned that yet, but we might in the future.
Well, it's nice to have something to aspire to. You know, there's future progress with it. I love it. I love the idea as well, because you've sold some to forestry on the island. So there's actually trees. I mean, and smaller buyers too, but you know, there's actually trees going back onto the island, produced on the island. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, it is amazing. Yeah, because the Glenaris estate, which has just been bought by a company that likes to grow trees, they're planting the whole of Glenaris estate with native trees.
Okay.
And they will buy some. I mean, they're like
you're never going to be able to supply them all.
We'll not be able to supply them all, but they did say yesterday that they would buy all our trees this year.
Wow.
For their beat up. So that's fantastic.
Fantastic.
So, and just looking at what they're doing, the regeneration of everything, it's just a completely different mindset. So yeah, that's very encouraging.
And that was the tour yesterday you were just talking about, wasn't it? When you were talking about you can't plant the whole of the area, so understanding habitat creation is more important than how yeah. That's so exciting. Like, it's amazing. I think it's just it's so much more than just a tree nursery, you know?
Yes, it's a whole environmental ethos, really. And we're doing another little project. I could go on forever, but we're doing a little project because we realize we need to grow the plants that go on an understory when you're planting a new set of woodlands. So we're about to start on a little project to collect seeds to grow flowers and wild flowers and plants.
I love it
as well. So that's another, because you realize that you can plant a woodland anywhere, but it might not have the plants that are the understory of that. So
that's fascinating. And it like eventually it probably would, because it create the right habitat, but you're speeding up the process by actually introducing those understory earlier in the process. Really interesting.
And some of it's lost because of the way things are managed.
Yeah. Well, that's it. Well, so if you I'll carry on.
That's it, really. It's just we haven't yet started collecting seeds, so that's going to be another different avenue, really.
Sounds like you need more volunteers.
yes, possibly.
Yeah. I think it'd be great. I think it's like has such potential to become such like a massive community project, you know. You can drum up more people to help out. You can really create something special. I mean, you already are, but like just And do you have the school? I know the school go to the orchard. There's another orchard next door. Do they ever come to learn about the trees?
We've had a few projects where they've come. Yes, mainly with the wildlife rangers have brought children in the summer. It's quite tricky because you have to catch it when we're actually planting seeds, or you know. So there's times when it's not always. But I think that will come over time.
Because it's just such an educational opportunity for kids to learn about the process of how trees grow. And like as you were talking about, you know, even if you could set it up that you're not really planting, but set up showing them some of the you know, it'd just be really, you know, and that way getting the young kids involved early on, and perhaps they'll help later on. You know, it's just.
Well, that's the thought.
It's just, I love.
Yeah,
we
definitely will.
Yeah. I love the idea of showing children these days, like with actually show and tell. You know, them seeing some of the processes. I mean, it would have been for me, because I've always liked nature and learning about things like that, it would have been fascinating as a kid
Yeah.
seeing that, understanding how slow trees grow
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
You know, there's a whole, yeah, but yeah,
So,
excellent. We've
we
gone
could
on a,
talk forever.
yeah, I
Yeah,
know,
we
we
could
really
talk forever
could.
and ever and ever about gardens and trees. It's
Yeah,
just a
it's a whole,
wonderful place to be.
yes. Well, it's that thing as nature is healing, and so getting yourself out in your garden or a garden or out in nature, and actually just kind of becoming more aware of all the details within nature, and that's what
Yes.
you've started to learn with the trees, and I've been learning with the garden. It's just learning all the connections and understanding, everything grows from the earth and the soil, and it starts there and works its way up. It's
Yeah.
really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So even just walking in amongst trees is a spiritual experience, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah. It's yeah, and it's just, it takes us away from all the devices that we have, and
Yeah.
it's to experience it, you need to slow down and just like be. And sometimes that's hard.
Yes.
But there's something about at some stage nature just comes through anyway, even if you're struggling with that.
Yeah.
It does slow you down.
Yeah.
I've been enjoying because I've been doing paddle boarding, going out onto the lake and water, and just because the water tends to, I'm highly empathic and sensitive, so going out in the water seems to insulate me from the outside world in a way that I'd never experienced before. So if I go out
Yeah.
into the middle of the lake on the paddleboard, I can just experience the nature that's right in front of me instead of the
That's
outside.
right.
And that's just, yeah, understanding how much nature can help us feel better and feel more like
Yeah.
ourselves again
Definitely.
in a world that's very busy. So, yeah. But yeah, thank you so much for coming and chatting.
That's
I know
that's
you were a
okay.
bit sort of flabbergasted at my idea of talking about gardening, but I knew that, it would be a really nice topic for us to talk about because
Hmm.
you experience what I experienced with it. So, yeah.
Yeah. And if anyone wants to follow us, we're the Mull Community Native Tree Nursery.
Perfect.
So
And
there you
that's
go.
on
On
Facebook.
Facebook. Yep.
Yeah, and there's
So
loads of great like time lapse videos and things of
there's yes.
processes, and yeah, and just it's a real wholesome community project. I really like it.
Yeah.
So yeah, please go and give them a follow, and if you're on Mull and you want to help out, get in contact and give them
Anytime.
a hand.
Yep. Anytime. Yeah.
It's not like they have to be there at every time you're doing stuff, but yeah,
No.
helping's helping, and that's that's
That's
what you
that's the
need.
good thing. Yeah.
I'm a bit
Definitely.
far away to help now, but
Yeah.
I would love to have been involved with it. I wish I regret sort of not being a bit, but you were still very early stages when I was still in Scotland. You weren't
Yeah. Yeah.
quite, you were just, starting at small scale.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Mum, very
Yeah.
much for joining.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
brilliant.